Well, welcome to season two of the Happy Century Corner podcast at Mendability. Those of you who've been following us, you know that we want to help everyone, but especially when they are feeling vulnerable, to feel happier, more comfortable in their own skin, more confident, proud of themselves even, so that they can be their true selves. And we can all journey together through life, more happily. And so our contribution is to work on brain health. We believe that as our brains grow stronger, healthier, faster, all of this good stuff, all of us benefit. But we think especially of those among us who maybe struggle with sleep or overwhelmed by the barrage of information from the environment or crippled with anxiety, for example. And so we developed a gentle, family-centered program of whole brain games that boosts brain development, activates the brain's health-healing mechanisms, and a lot of really good things. It's based on the neuroscience field of environmental enrichment, and we call it sensory enrichment. And so while we're experts in brain development, you may say, we know that there's so much more that parents have to navigate, especially when it comes to self-advocacy or teaching independence. And many of our children, face challenges, not just in communication, but in feeling truly seen, heard, included in the world around them. How do we help them build that kind of confidence? How do we ensure that they have agency over their own bodies and choices, even when others assume that they don't? And so that's why I'm really excited to discuss this today with someone who has lived this experience firsthand and it can share their experience with us. So let me formally introduce our guest. Hollis Peirce is a historian, advocate, podcast host who brings both, I would say, personal insight and deep reflection to the challenges of living with a disability. Diagnosed with muscular dystrophy as an infant, he spent his life challenging assumptions about independence, dignity, and self-advocacy. He earned a master's degree in history with a specialization in digital humanities. I'm going to have to ask you what that is, Hollis. I don't know what digital humanities is. And founded the Ottawa Power Wheelchair Hockey League to foster community and inclusion in adaptive sports. So beyond his personal and academic accomplishments, Hollis has dedicated himself to improving the patient experience in long-term care, serving as a patient representative on multiple hospital advisory committees, and his work advocating for the rights and dignity of disabled individuals earned him the Governor General of Canada's Meritorious Service Medal in 2024. So Hollis, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me, Kim. It's a pleasure to be here.
I like to subject all of our guests to this question, but I'm dying to know what digital humanities are. Or you know what? Maybe we'll make that part of it. Will be like a combined question. So what we know that my first question typically is, did something happen to little Hollis that planted the seed for where you're at today? It's pretty obvious that muscular dystrophy was something that happened to you, to little Hollis. But I'm talking about, did something happen to little Hollis while in this world of muscular dystrophy that made you want to say, no, I'm going to be an advocate. I'm going to create, the Power Wheelchair Hockey League. I'm going to work on a master's degree in history. Do you remember something happening in your youth that made you think that way?
Well, Kim, when I was diagnosed as an infant, the doctor told my parents that I would have an inability to thrive. And so my family really just pushed me and pushed the idea that just because I had a physical disability does not mean that would inhibit me from succeeding in other ways, specifically academically, because my mind is not impacted by the genetic physical disability.
And did you like being pushed by your parents? Did you think this is awesome? I love my parents for pushing me. I was like, give me a break. I'm suffering as enough as it is. Where were you on that spectrum?
You know, they when I say they pushed me, um, they didn't, it's not like if I came home with a bad grade, they would punish me and make me stop watching TV for a week and a half or something like that. But it was
That
more,
sounded awfully specific there, Hollis.
yeah, no, I know, I'm just imagining things.
Okay.
Um, it was more that, I pushed myself because I um just wanted to prove that I could do whatever I wanted to do. And I didn't want my disability to sort of be the main factor in my life story. I wanted me to be the main factor in my life story. And, my mom always says how it's just how funny it is that I, out of she had three kids, and only one of those kids enjoyed reading. And I am that kid that enjoyed reading, and I couldn't hold a book open physically. So, we had to find many different ways that I could hold the book open. I have book stands, but even that didn't work out. And I benefited greatly from living in the 21st century. And, I would not have succeeded academically had it not been for the fact that I am living in the time that I am right now. Which is why when I was thinking about making a podcast and thinking about what I wanted to be about, I thought I want to be about how life is like living with a disability in the 21st century. So I called it 21st Century Disability.
Hmm. Um, you talk about, you were the only of the only one of your siblings who enjoyed reading, and the irony is that you couldn't hold the book physically opened. Was there a seminal moment or a pivotal moment when you decided to take charge, not just take charge of your own life, but represent and help other people that were in your community?
You know what? I think that was a combination of factors. I myself had a very, very supportive family. Um, and therefore I knew how important it was to receive love and care from those around me. And also, I had in my lifetime, I would go to Easter Seals camps as a young kid. And for those of your listeners who might not know what Easter Seals camps are outdoor camps where physically disabled kids or just disabled kids in general attend, and they have the assistance of camp counselors who help us do things like rock climbing and outdoor camping and swimming and going on high ropes course and going sailing. And at a very young age, I had uh, two individuals kind of bring me under their wing, and they kind of showed me how um, life was just life as a disabled person, and it life was still fun, and life they could do so many things, and I think it was those two um, that really impacted my life, and so as I aged, I sort of saw the opportunity to play that same similar role for younger people around me in similar situations that I am.
And that's feel sounds like such a contrast to, because I'm thinking about when we prepared for this interview, you talked about the times when you were physically in the room, but it felt like nobody knew you were in the room because nurses or caregivers would talk about you rather than to
To me,
you.
absolutely.
And um did that contribute to you wanting to become an advocate, or were you already an advocate there? And how can you tell us how it made you feel? Because I'm thinking about all those children with who are severely affected by their condition to the point where, they can't really communicate how they feel. And so because of this lack of communication, they end up being talked about as well instead of being talked to. They may
Hmm.
not be in a wheelchair like you are, but they may be just in a position where they cannot communicate. And so, how does it feel?
It when you're in a room and you are being talked about like you're a piece of furniture and you're not being spoken to, it's quite alarming, and it's it's a the feeling that it um creates is loneliness because you feel like you are alone, and um at times that is so terrifying that you let it happen. But then there's other times where you're just so incredibly frustrated um, that you just have to put an end to it immediately by saying, no, 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 hi, I'm here. Like, I know all of this information, not my nurse. You talk to me. I'm a 37-year-old man with a master's degree, and I know my care better than she does.
Yeah, yeah. There's so many. It's easy to assume that when somebody cannot communicate well, and I'm not talking about you because obviously you can, but I'm
Yeah,
talking about the world that we live in, which is children with neurological conditions that affect their ability to communicate, for example. It's assumed that because there's no response, there's no understanding. What do you think professionals and caregivers can do differently?
um, I think just be more pay more attention to observing, and I think you and I spoke about this when we were preparing for this interview, and um, just if you're a doctor and you're meeting a patient for the first time and their mom is in the room with you, like, I mean, I'm 37 still, and my mom still insists on coming to a lot of my appointments. I've told her I am okay, but she's, but in some extent, I really appreciate when she's there because I know that she is advocating for my greater being. But I think that if you're a doctor or a nurse or any health professional, I think the uh, best way of communicating with a new patient is to observe how they are communicating with their parents or their siblings. And then just try to recreate that um, in as best you can.
How does your mom talk to the doc? How does she involve you in a conversation when she's there for your appointment?
Um, well, that's changed in many ways as I reach different ages. As I become an adult now, I introduce myself and my mom. And in the past, when I was a kid, she would take the lead. Um, but now that I am so much more aware of ableism and how big of a factor it is. I like to break the ice immediately, and I sort of take charge of the conversation, and um, and then uh just sort of, oh yeah, and by the way, this is my mother. And but then on other days, sometimes I slip into just being nice. And I've had appointments where the doctor's like trying to get to know me and my medical history, and my automatic go-to is, "Oh, I'm fine, I'm great," and and then my mom will whisper in my ear, "Hollis, they mean why are you in a wheelchair?" Oh, yeah, right. I have muscular dystrophy. Yeah, yeah.
So if you wanted to advise a parent who is talking to a therapist and their child is in the room, how would you like that parent to engage with the doctor while that parent is in the room? The child's in the room.
Well, uh, I think it would depend on, again, the age range that they're in. I would say, as a teenager, you start to be able to answer some more questions. But I think I think as a parent, I would tell them to if their child is capable of communicating and answering questions, I would say to tell the medical practitioner, oh, thank you. Anthony is perfectly capable of telling you his needs, but maybe you just have to ask him a yes or no question, or just be patient while um, you know, he's stuttering, but he'll get there.
And um, why do you think it is important to give full agency to the child?
I think that um, I think it's important because if at some point in that child's life, they're going to be in a situation where they are not around their family and they might be having an emergency. And so, if they are or on their own and they're needing to answer questions, and so I feel like that would provide the child with the confidence that they need to get through those times.
Do you remember? You talked about doctors and therapists entering the room asserting dominance, which is a
Hmm.
slightly different version of entering the room and ignoring you or treating
Yeah, it
you
is.
like you're a piece of
Absolutely.
furniture. What does that look like, and what impact does it have on patients as well?
Um, I always found when a doctor came in the room and would treat me like uh, a thing that maybe for instance I had a major back surgery, right? And the surgery was successful, but it created a side effect that was unexpected. And the surgeon didn't want to sort of recognize that was a factor. He sort of um, wanted to say, no, 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 nothing was wrong. The surgery was a success. It's fine. We're good. And it's nothing, any complication that you're having now has nothing to do with me or the job that I did. Which is entirely correct. However, um, it is very frustrating when a doctor is not willing to even answer questions or concerns from their patients because they just see them as objects. And like I told you I think I told you about the other doctor who was meeting me for the first time, and in order to assess my physical capability, she came in the room, lifted my arm up in the air, and dropped it. And, when as you know, I'm not saying that was something that was painful, but it certainly was. I would argue that it had some levels of physical abuse, uh,
It's not so much a physical. Well, I don't know.
or just
I
emotional
haven't
abuse.
experienced this, but to me, it
Emotional,
felt like emotional abuse.
yes,
There
emotional.
was no there was no asking for permission. Hey, I need to run this test. This is what it's going to look like. Stay limp. Or try to do this or try to do that. Or I'm
Yeah,
going to do something surprising because I need to see your response. So I cannot tell you what I'm about to do, but I need your permission to perform that test.
yeah,
That is this idea of asking for permission. We do our program involves a lot of hands-on activities or sensory experiences, tactile experiences. So the children will experience some touching, or a smell will be introduced in the environment. And parents who have kids need to be ask for permission before they experience this new thing.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know why it's so hard to understand. I think people ask for permission when they feel like they might not have the right to, and so they're asking for the right to, but they assume that because they're the parent or the nurse or the doctor, they have this right to manipulate you without your permission.
Yes, exactly.
So, what have you done, or what have you said that have that's been useful in helping a therapist? And so I see a similar challenge in therapy with children with autism, where there's also the it's another rabbit hole that I want to go down with you. Let's stay in that
Yeah.
rabbit hole that we're in. This idea of asking permission and acknowledging the agency of the person. They're
Yeah.
disabled, not less, right? We've heard Temple Grandin say that a lot about autism in particular. So
Yeah.
what have you said or done that you have seen have the most impact on helping other people realize that they need to ask for permission before doing something?
Absolutely. Well, and also, Kim, that is just going back to what we were talking about, a little while ago in terms of strategies when you're first entering a room, asking for permission is a very good strategy as well. So you know, when I was a
You're
young,
talking about entering your bedroom, right?
that yes, but also in like a doctor's office, for instance, if my mom is in the room, maybe asking permission from the patient to talk to your parent about your physical or medical needs that they are there to uh, deal with.
Right. So in a situation where the person is not capable of communicating about the issues that the therapist wants to discuss,
Hmm.
acknowledge that with them. Say, "Hey, I want to talk. I need to know about this and this and this. It looks like you cannot communicate about this. I'm going to talk to your parent about this." Just even maybe not necessarily asking permission, but just sort of acknowledging, I'm going to talk about you in front of you. It's going to be awkward. The same way you
Yeah,
would do it for any normal situation. And I use the word normal with a lot of air quotes around it.
yeah,
But it's the same human dignity that you have to keep in mind, even if there's a lot of tubes and wheelchairs and or maybe other signs that the person is less capable of communicating than the other.
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, it's I think it's something that even we have been guilty of. We conduct a lot of assessments, and the child is present, and we go in and when we interact with the person, we interact with the person like we would with any other person. But sometimes we take shortcuts and we ask parents quick questions about certain things
Hmm.
that are about this person who is present. And you talked about this makes you feel lonely.
Yeah.
And there's so many other times when you feel lonely. It's a
Hmm.
shame that we, who are supposed to know better, have contributed to that. And so I feel like I want to apologize to you and to and all the other parents listening that maybe we've been in contact with because we've done this too. I remember a couple of instances where I did that. Um, so with nonverbal, so this other rabbit hole that I was thinking about, this idea of, you know what, I forgot what it was. Do you remember what rabbit hole I was going to explore with you?
You were talking about asking permission and it was something to do with like nonverbal uh cases. No,
Nope.
no. Nothing.
There's probably some people listening right now. It's like who remember very well what I was trying to say, and I'm sorry, people, I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
Um, so there's another thing that we discussed when we were preparing for this,
Right.
and my notes talk about eye level communication.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, uh, this is another factor of ableism is talking down to someone in a wheelchair. But I have learned, like, when I first was realizing that this was happening, um, I would become overtly frustrated by it. But now that I am um a bit more aware of it, I am realizing that there is specific reasoning for it. Um, and so a lot of the time, people people's natural instinct, um, is not caused by them making assumptions or, things like that. But, when you are uh, standing up as an adult and you see someone lower down and at like a childlike height, it's your brain tells you automatically, okay, you're dealing with a child, so you need to speak at a higher tone. It's like, oh, hi, Hollis. How are you today? Um, but, uh, it's, but then on other levels, you know, after you get to know the person, um, uh, you, you are no longer speaking in those tones of voice because you know that they are a fully functioning adult. But then again, there's also some people who who are not well educated in terms of disability and not, and by when I say not well educated, I don't mean like um schooling, but it might be that they have never had any direct contact with a disabled person in their life. Like that maybe no one in their family is
Hmm.
recognizably disabled. And uh, so if they see someone in a wheelchair, you might make automatic assumptions that they are also cognitively disabled in certain ways.
And
And
it's all, I mean, not all, but it doesn't help that you have this top-down experience that
exactly.
you're looking down to this person, and so your brain is making a whole bunch of assumptions about how the communication and interaction is going to be like. Do you remember the first time someone came and the first time they met you, they decided to sit down on a chair to talk to you at eye level? Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was one of my doctors came in the room and they sat down and they looked at me eye to eye and they started talking to me like I was a person or like I was the adult that I was and not a child and not impacted by the fact that I might be a 30-year-old with my mother in the room, but that I probably can answer my own questions.
And
Uh,
do you remember what it felt like?
it felt it felt empowering. It felt empowering. Um,
Empowering, and so that applies so much to deal. You used younger children as an example of top-down conversations, and this is the world that we live in.
mhm.
um, Top-down conversations to children who are cognitive delayed feels like a double whammy. And so,
Yeah.
why do you think? How does this the dynamic? How do you think the dynamic would change if a therapist crouched to be able to speak with that person and engage with them at eye level?
I think it would create a greater level of understanding. Um, Even though you are, in the same room as somebody when you're standing up over them, as soon as you crouch down or kneel down and look at them eye to eye, uh, you start to see the world from their perspective, and uh, it allows you to um yeah, it allows you to enter their world, so to speak. And what one thing that I was really, I mean, I have right now, I'm sitting in a chair that can elevate so that I am speaking to people at an eye to eye level when they're standing up. Um, and it's remarkable, the difference, of in the way that people talk to me when I am at their eye level, as opposed to when I am in the hallway, lower down. And it can be the same person, and they are they still get into that natural tone of voice if I'm lower down. But if I'm higher up, they are speaking to me like I am almost intimidating in certain ways. Um, and I remember when I crossed the um when I crossed the stage at my graduate degree graduation, the president of of the university got down on one knee to give me my diploma. And um, I thought that was just, yeah, I thought that was very cool. Yeah. And um, very, I thought that was amazing that they sort of recognized. I thought that was a great way to recognize that I had accomplished this. Like whoever I was. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, this idea of loneliness, there's something else you said that made you feel lonely. And it's the idea of loneliness from touch. That
Yeah.
even though caregivers are physically present, they manipulate you, but there's nobody that really touches you.
Mm,
Can you tell us
absolutely.
about that? Maybe a couple of incidents that illustrate what it feels like to be lonely from touch, and maybe something that somebody did that made you feel seen and touched. Right? We talk about being seen. Somebody walks in the room, they don't treat you like a piece of furniture. They acknowledge you. They say hello, just like they would if any other person. But we also touch one another,
Yeah.
right? Like we'll shake hands, or we'll a pat on the shoulder, or a hug, or or a punch in the shoulder as a joke. Tell us about both extremes and what it feels like to be in those situations.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I don't think people appreciate how much your mental health like appreciates the feeling of skin on skin contact. Chemicals in your body react to an appreciation of hugging your loved one or, snuggling in bed or even shaking hands, as you say. But when you are living full time in a modern day medical facility, and the biggest concern is spread of germs. And I am not gonna sit here today and proclaim that germs don't exist and it's all a big falsehood that, you know, we need to not wear masks or anything like this. But um, because I know that it's true, because I've been healthy for the last like 2 years. I have except for this fall when I had COVID randomly. But anytime I ask uh a nurse to hand me my TV remote or move my arm forward or put my hand on my joystick, their automatic response is, okay, let me glove up. And
Mm.
you are constantly feeling the feeling of plastic. You never have any um any feelings of body heat on your body from direct contact. Um, and it's I find it so stupid in certain cases. I find it so frustratingly stupid that that they think that handing me the remote will uh
Somehow, because you're in a wheelchair, you carry more germs than somebody else.
not yet, maybe, but not necessarily so. But like, they don't want a germ from one room to spread to another patient's room. But
Oh, I see.
but in the end, you can always wash your hands. Uh,
They
and
did a study on touch starvation actually
oh, really?
during COVID. I don't know if you heard about that, but they showed
No, I
that
didn't.
individuals who isolated and were deprived of physical touch had higher rates of depression, higher rates of anxiety, and even physical pain.
Yeah,
Somehow, skin to skin contact through the release of oxytocin, through the release of serotonin, through the activation of the vagal nerve system, it helps the brain regulate all sorts of. You talked about mental health, right?
yeah,
Oxytocin, that's the hormone that makes you feel like you can trust the person. It's that
absolutely,
you're connected to that person and that you're safe.
absolutely.
Without it's like a fuel, and without oxytocin being triggered, and the way to trigger that oxytocin is through skin to skin contact. And so your brain is deprived of that chemical, and so you don't have the opportunity to tell your brain physiologically, I'm safe, I'm connected, I'm trusted, and I'm not lonely. So
Mm-hmm.
we talk about you're an adult and I'm an adult and, grin and bear it and you'll be fine and we're fine. We don't realize all of those physiological mechanisms that are in place to help us feel fine. It's not a psychological thing, it's a physiological process that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and even like it's um you know, the prostitution is illegal, but they have uh 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 like cuddle but therapists
Mm,
and who are and when you look at their websites, they cost they have a higher rate of cost if you want skin on skin contact. But they also advertise that this is more therapeutic. And as you say, it's true because it fuels your body with energy.
yeah, yeah. And so I'm thinking of the children that we work with, right? Who don't always process tactile input the same way. Sometimes there's even wires getting crossed in the white matter of the brain where regular touch is processed as a painful experience, and what would you and I would consider a painful experience, they feel it as a normal touch. And so you have some different ways of processing touch that create this touch gap within families where children like to be touched and therefore they are not touched. And it creates this vicious cycle of that's lack of stimulation, right? Trust, connection, safety, but also stimulation through gentle
Mhm.
touch. The brain regulates its serotonin, and serotonin is like the hormone that controls all of the other hormones and just about every other function in the brain. It helps you control melatonin, which is in charge of sleep. It controls the control of muscles. It controls learning. It controls memory retrieval. It controls feelings of when you feel in control and at peace, that everything makes sense. There's so many things that serotonin is important for, and kids don't get that. And then you wonder why they're anxious, lonely, disconnected, feeling unsafe. And all you have to do is touch. And so this is a big deal for us through our sensory enrichment program. There's a lot of touching happening, whether we get the kids to touch things or they're being touched with objects to stimulate all of this serotonin and oxytocin stuff so that physiologically we can support the development of their brain. But you experienced it not as a cognitively disabled because it didn't touch you because you live in this environment where touch is maybe, a mechanism of spreading germs around, and so you are also feeling that, and it's great to hear your experience in that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, there's a couple more rabbit holes to explore, but we're running out of time. Um, so if there was one thing that you think therapists or parents, caregivers need to remember, what what is it?
One thing I would say, I would say the one thing that someone would need to remember is to engage uh, the person in the conversation. Talk to them. Don't talk about them. Even if you're a medical professional and you are talking to a parent about their child, include the child in the conversation. Or include even if it's an adult. Have a multi-person conversation. that, that allows the patient to answer questions, and or the parents as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not so much about getting the information that you need. We're not saying talk to them because they're better equipped to tell you about themselves, although in your case, this is the case. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about respecting human dignity, that they're a person who's feeling very lonely and very unhappy most of the time, and we don't want to be a contributor to that. We want them to feel like they're connected to other human beings, that they're respected as a human being.
Hmm.
And I thank you for reminding me of this. I feel like we take it for granted. This is not a thing you learn in school, right? This idea of human agency. This is something
Yeah.
that you learn by interacting with other human beings. And often our children who are in the with those neurological conditions, they don't develop, they don't interact a lot with a lot of people, and so don't have a very strongly established sense of that concept of human dignity, and so they feel lonely, and they feel lonely, but they don't know why. And so they can't
Mhm.
really stand up for themselves and they cannot advocate for themselves to say, this is why I'm feeling lonely. You're making me feel lonely and you don't have to. There's so many easy things you can do to make me
Yeah.
feel less lonely. And so it's up to you. And thank you so much for doing that work, being an advocate for, yeah, I'm going to call it for humanness, reminding us what it is to be human amongst
Absolutely.
humans. Yeah. Thank you so much, Hollis. Everybody listening, have a blessed week. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Jim.